Hey there, welcome to episode 135 of the FFS Talk audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo, as usual. We're recording this at 9:07 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas on Thursday, June 25, 2026. Today's title and topic, warm introductions. So hopefully you know what that is. If you don't, there is a Wikipedia page, sort of. If you're not familiar with the FFS Talk audio program, well, let me tell you, you've come to the right place. The design of this program is, it's intended to enable conversation, discussion, argument, debate, no fisticuffs, with maybe a guest someday. So we're really in the seeding phase. We have been for 135 episodes where there's someone with an opposing or different view. It may or may not be like diametrically opposed. And we can discuss what works, what does not, and what we can do about it. It's sort of intended to be a constructive dialogue or trialogue. Really, there's no limitations on, there may be 2 or 3 or 4 people, or who knows. We have yet to explore that fully, to be honest. So for the 135 episodes prior, and then this one, because there was an episode 0, the notion is I'll take a position and express the 3 sections, I guess, my views on the 3 sections, the what works, what doesn't, and what we can do about it. And then, somebody might want to join in someday, and we'll see what happens. I haven't really been promoting the show out into the wild to get participation, and that is one of the things that we need to address here in Greater Vegas is how to get the word out when it doesn't involve gambling and crime and the Raiders. The fun stuff. So one of these days. So warm introductions. We'll get to that. If you don't know what FFS stands for, by the way, you really need to hang out with more Irish people. Go to an Irish pub. There's plenty of them. There's McMullen's here in Vegas. That's not a paid plug. It's not a paid promotion. It's merely a plug. It's a nice spot. Actually, and Irish pubs are typically family friendly because they do serve a delightful menu and so on. So yeah, and you will probably hear someone utter the full version of what FFS means if you play your cards right. Bring the whole family, see what it means. Anyway, hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary, which I'll read to you. And the links for today's episode include the usual 2 and the Wikipedia link I referred to earlier. So let's get on with it so we can head into a Friday that will probably be, I don't know. I honestly don't know if it'll be super hot. It was raining in Vegas yesterday morning, so who knows? Who knows what we're going to get, but I think it's supposed to be hot. We do live in a desert after all. Good time to stay in and make podcasts or listen to them. On that note, get some water real quick. The summary of today's episode. If you have ever set out to meet a group of people by way of introductions, it could be one person also, by the way, you may have experienced this trap where you end up meeting a limited cross-section of a population, which may not be quite what you were after. So you have to keep that in mind. That'll be summed up in the what we do about it section. The FFS Talk homepage is still at ffstalk.com. Someday it will look nice and it will provide a way for you to contact the show and maybe become our first willing participant. Who knows? One of these days. So many things to work on. It's not even funny. That should be a topic one of these days. Overwhelming to-do list. The profile page linking everything has been my sort of generic contact page that I don't have to manage. I manage what's on it, but I don't have to manage the brand, the buymeacoffee.com website and all that stuff. They've had problems now and then. I don't have to worry about it. buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, my universal link tree of sorts, has links to all of my media productions, various projects. There are some affiliate links if you'd like to help the show out, various shows, your producer, in various ways, coffee beans and so on. These are products that I actually use, especially the coffee beans. You do not have to spend any money at Buy Me a Coffee, though. You don't have to actually buy me a coffee through the website. You can if you want. Buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo is where that profile is. And the Buy Me an Update audio program publish on Monday mornings, 5 minutes or less, a quick rundown on the previous week's audio program topics, and then news and announcements. I try to make the news and announcements in one place. So there it is. So that's at danhugo/posts. It's linked there on the profile page and all that. It was originally named because it was exclusively at buymeacoffee.com. It was named for that site. So Buy Me an Update, Buy Me a Coffee. It's not affiliated with the site in any other way. And but now it's published in all the usual podcast places because it turns out nobody goes to buymeacoffee.com in search of podcast episodes. And they don't offer an RSS feed anyway. So there we go. But the show goes on, and check it out if you want. Selection bias, that's another name for warm introductions. So Wikipedia page for selection bias. Warm introductions are essentially sampling bias if you read the Wikipedia page. So pretty close to the beginning of the page. Sample bias. So warm introductions essentially limit the number of people that you're going to encounter of a larger, the full population. And we'll make a note of that, or we'll make a point of that. There we go. In the final section of today's show. On that note, by the way, this will be a brief show today. Warm introductions are not that dramatic, but I'll probably end with a story that's relevant. What works? For the purposes of meeting new friends with similar interests, networking for the purposes of expanding a client base or locating collaborators. These are all fairly common, I think. Warm introductions are likely more valuable than merely showing up to gatherings and hoping for the best. This is often called a referral, or perhaps there's a connector in your mind, or in your mindset, in your midst, and connectors will go around and say, you know who you should meet, and that kind of thing. So whether you want to meet new people or not, a connector or a super connector will probably perform the warm introductions regardless. This is often called a referral, though. So same thing, even if it's not labeled a warm introduction. So keep that in mind. Apparent commonalities based on knowing the people involved and so on. You always have to recognize how familiar is this connector with the people involved and so on. Not a bad thing. It's things to keep in mind. We'll get to that. 2 cases in particular where a warm introduction may be of value when seeking to hire for what is sometimes called a culture fit. So yes, you need skills and appropriate background and whatever the case is. Culture fit is when the person will get along. And the same is arguably true when you're seeking a romantic partner, which is, it's a kind of a culture fit. It's a limited sized culture, perhaps. You could take that wherever you want, but it's a culture fit of sorts. As in the connector scenario, a person in the middle, so to speak, knows what both sides may be seeking and what the other possesses to meet those expectations and requirements. Though in these scenarios, there is some additional commitment level to consider. So you're not just introducing people who may do business together and so on. You're introducing people who may enter into an employee-employer relationship or a romantic relationship. It may persist for some time and so on. You may want to perform the introductions anonymously just in case. So making the introduction in these scenarios possibly more consequential, and I would say definitely not so much possibly. It's still a matter of skewing the odds, though. So you're matchmaking essentially. So not always a bad thing, but not always a good thing. Occasionally there will be one or more designated first contact characters whom one might seek out on arriving in a new place. Maybe you've moved someplace, or maybe you're going to be in a location for some amount of time, or you return there frequently and so on. I myself, as a frequent traveler, kind of randomly encountered people who were not designated but turned out to be these sorts of personalities. Performing research and seeking participants, looking for where to begin meeting potential friends and contacts. This is essentially it's essentially the on-ramp to the general case previously described, where you're looking to meet friends or business contacts and so on. Except we begin with a cold introduction to someone with the role to take that ball and run with it. That can be a good thing. but you're kind of handing over a lot of trust to get your own assimilation, your own acclimation going. It's kind of a bootstrap point. And, you should probably start off with multiple people. Don't just rely on one single person. And I've seen that here in Vegas. Oh, you got to go talk to this person, and then they'll introduce you to a number of other people. So branch out. What does not work, or what might not work? Selection bias, and you can skim over the Wikipedia page if you're not familiar. Selection bias leads to a constrained set of potential contacts when seeking friends, colleagues, and connections in general. In one scenario, a gathering guests invited by one person, let's say it's one person, it might be a group of the invitation committee, will be a selected group of people. In another scenario, so they may select a group of people in a particular field for a networking event, particular interest for a friendly gathering, to a meet and greet of sorts. Yeah, so that can depend. In another scenario, you might be introduced to someone, and that person will introduce you to another person, and so on. So there's a chain of warm introductions. This is part of the connector scenario, but we must consider the people not introduced along this path. So if you can imagine, if you do meet the initial contact, first contact, and they introduce you to two people, and each of those two people introduces you to one or two people, and so on and so on. You can imagine if you were to draw this in a picture, it would be like a cone, right? Every layer from the top, the tip of the cone or pyramid, if you like, is that first contact. And then as the number of introductions, wow, all manner of noises from that vehicle on the road near which we produce this audio program. So the pyramid that forms is essentially each layer as you move along being introduced by one person and then to their connections, and then each of them introduces you to another connection and so on. So you end up with this cone or pyramid of people to whom you've been introduced. Then you should imagine, there's a lot of people outside of that cone or pyramid that I have not met. So those would not be the same warm introductions, right? If the people in the cone only introduce you to the people below them in the hierarchy there, it's not a real hierarchy, but for the purposes of this, sort of an ordered tree or cone, they don't know everybody. Not everybody knows everybody yet. So they introduce you to the people that they knew, that they felt would be interesting to you or relevant, etc., and would be relevant to the person to whom you are introduced. So introductions are kind of a two-way street, right? Sometimes three ways. So you're not meeting the people not in that tree or cone or hierarchy. Where am I? You're not introduced to the people that are not on that path of familiarity. So at any point in that cone or tree or hierarchy, if you were to say, I feel like I'm missing out on the vast majority of the population, which you would be. So you have to keep that in mind, which we'll get to that. And you can consider multiple, like I said moments ago, you could consider meeting multiple first contacts if you're new to an area, etc. There are people that just go to meetups and gatherings. Often they're seeking clients and so on. Part of the reason to do that is because you need a broader cross-section of the population. You never know who you're going to meet and where you're going to meet them. So if you rely on warm introductions too much, you're only meeting a tiny fraction of an overall population, most likely. If we look again at locating job candidates or romantic partners by way of these sorts of introductions, we are once again faced with the selection bias. And in these and similar scenarios where there is a level of commitment involved, warm introductions are a shortcut, yes, which again skews the odds and saves some of the time and effort spent on non-ideal selections. It kind of sounds cold when you really think about it, but you're making a big decision in these sort of cases. This also factors out potential introductions that fall outside of the cone of warm introductions. Hey, it's almost like I was just referring to that. So in this case, that cone is, you can think of it as, who could I have met, right? Let's be frank, your warm introductions may stop you meeting better possibilities. It sounds glib, but, they call it settling. So if you didn't get an opportunity to meet a larger swath of the population because you are relying too much on warm introductions. Not to say the person you eventually select for the job or the other job are not good, but, and again, to be glib, the better choice may never have been introduced. Warm introductions can boost initial trust, which is part of the appeal to save time and whatnot. You're introduced to someone, the referral is a part of that trust metric. Oh, if you know so-and-so, then you must be okay. But if your trust assessment is based on that of your introducer, so I just described that, or a chain of introducers as well, if all these people know you or you all kind of know each other, then I guess that's okay, right? It must be good. You run the risk of letting your guard down, so to speak. To put it glibly, you may avoid your due diligence on this path, which may be costly. This has actually been the case here in Vegas more than once, and it can be problematic or even dangerous, and I'll tell one such story at the end. What can we do about it? As is almost always the case with every episode of this audio program, it mostly begins with awareness, and so that's kind of a showstopper for a lot of people. Warm introductions are not bad by any means. I'm not trying to tell you to, get away, don't do it. No, not the case. So long as selection bias is accounted for, so be aware, which means you're not even listening anymore. Understand not only who a warm introduction brings into your circle, so to speak, but understand as well who is left out unless you intervene, unless you actually take some proaction, meet other people who themselves will conduct warm introductions and so on. Outreach is a challenge in today's noisy digital world, and getting people to show up is a challenge in general if you're doing something in real life, in person. But reaching out beyond the familiar is one way to mitigate the selection bias inherent in warm introductions. So yeah, every once in a while, go to a different place and hang out with different people and strike up conversations and so on. There's any number of coffee shops and libraries and bookstores. Those are classics, right? We used to have Fry's Electronics. If you're looking for people interested in electronics, computers and so on, you would go to that, etc. So the setting, the venue, any number of possibilities to literally randomly meet people who are not warm introductions. It can help to mitigate some of that risk with a small r. I mean, most of the time you're probably fine. The perspective of this episode has been from the perspective of the newcomer, or generally a person being introduced. So you don't have all these connections and you're starting at the tip of the pyramid or the cone, or maybe you're just looking to meet new people in a place where you already know a lot of people. So you attend, I'm having a meetup for people looking to buy houses. And you're like, hey, I would love to, I'm not selling a house, but I would love to meet those people who are, looking for something. Who knows? So mostly it's been from that perspective, but there should be similar awareness, and that similar awareness is essential for the introducer as well. So awareness of all the things we're talking about here. Transparency with your charge, the person you're introducing. Hey, everybody I know already, here's a person who just moved into town. You should tell that person in a population of some particular size, right? There's 1 million people here, and we are in a room right now with everyone I know, and it's not 1 million people. You're only familiar with a small fraction, and that degree of familiarity is a factor. So less assumption or fewer assumptions on both sides is essential. So in fact, if someone is new to an area, a responsible connector introducing to this cadre of people or that cohort of others could and maybe should point out, hey, by the way, I don't know everybody. There are these are some interesting places to meet people, co-work spaces or different meetups or different events going on. The possibilities are endless. So it almost, if you're going to be a responsible connector, it almost comes down to you encouraging people to not rely on you as a connector. So maybe some people would do that. Warm introductions may be a great thing, but they may also be a not great thing. There is always the possibility that a warm introduction is not a good one and may even be problematic. Trust that feeling you may have. Look and listen and assess the situation. Always look out for your interests. And perhaps the old saying still rings true, trust but verify. So yeah, just because, especially if you're new to town or if you are not you're visiting for whatever reason, Vegas, we get a lot of visitors, more than who live here. Our population of residents in the Clark County, Greater Vegas area is around 2.4 million, I think, although I recently found out I was off by like 100,000 on the Vegas population. But let's say it's still around 2.4 million. Vegas is not 580, but more like 680,000 people, but then the rest of the county, unincorporated and so on. So 2.4 million people, there's a lot of people to meet. There's a lot of people that whoever you do meet won't know you, won't know them. So if you're new to the area, you might come across, you should meet so-and-so. They know everybody. That person may know 1,000 people. And when you say no, put that in air quotes. So do I trust who this person knows? Do they really know the person? An overly gregarious super connector might not really know the people, right? You can't really hang out with 1,000 people or whatever some people, I got 50,000 followers on LinkedIn. You don't know 50,000 people. Get out of here. So I'll tell you a story that actually happened here in Vegas. And I actually have already told this story a long time ago on the Quaggling Sand audio program. I'm trying to remember what the title of it was. It might actually be Trust But Verify, because you should. Do I want to? I'll just tell the brief version here. I'll tell the brief version here if you want to find the Quaggling Sand episode. I think there's a picture of an unsavory character on the cover. And all right, let me look. This was a short show anyway, so. Sorry, I'm not going to hum. So this began when I was still new in the Vegas area. But I had gone around and proactively engaged people who I did not know. So I actually flipped the script on the warm introductions. I was meeting more people that I did not know, and I was meeting them directly. So I was filling in my own cone of familiarity, I guess. Maybe that's a good thing. What am I waiting for? Okay, man. Oh, wait, I should be able to do this. If I can spell correctly. So yeah, I'd moved to Vegas and I was going around meeting. Is that it? Is that the one? Episode 16? Yeah. So this must be it. It's not Quaggling Sand, it's actually Cafe Genius Impresarios. And it was episode 16 of Cafe Genius Impresarios. You could find that in all the same places. You can find my links. And so if you go to the Buy Me a Coffee page, you can go to the Cafe Genius, not the homepage, not yet, but you could go to the Spotify profile page or all the other places where the episodes are. Episode 16, it was from June 16th. It was published June 16th, 2023. But here's the short version if you don't want to go hunting that down. So I had moved to Vegas. I was getting to know a lot of people in February. So I had moved to Vegas in 2013, August. By February of 2014, I was working for Intel, and I think it was in April. I could check for the actual date, but I think it was in April that I was taking my first trip for Intel, first of many. And somewhere in there in my travels through the downtown project population and so on. And I'll tell you, the moment I met this person, it was at the park. What was it called? What's the restaurant called? It's not Park at MGM. It's a restaurant right near Park on Fremont. Is it? Yeah, Park on Fremont, downtown. So Park on Fremont, nice little restaurant. There was a little gathering going on of some people from Europe or in town for an event of some sort. And I knew a person who knew several of the people in this group. And that person, I think, knew the character, the subject of the story. So he was leaning against like a pass-through window. There was a little shelf on it. So he's leaning against there. And he said, "Oh, you work at Intel?" And I said, "Yeah, I just started working there." He said, "Yeah, I used to work for Microsoft." Oh, okay. We had some conversation and so on. He would eventually, he wanted to start a company. He wanted to hire young people to be sort of the face of the company. So there were tons of young people running around downtown Vegas in the startup scene and all this stuff, downtown project. So he wanted to hire a group of people to kind of rep the product that he was building. And then he was the technical person that was implementing the product. Okay, sounds good. So he was kind of unusual, but he used to tell people, oh yeah, I'm friends with Dan. I used to work at Microsoft and I'm working on this thing. It was called Antibytes. And so I would be in some places and people that I would know would say, oh yeah, he was over here and he was, so you guys are friends? And it's like, I don't really know him, but sure, I don't know. Be careful with that. So I went off to Ireland. He drove me to the airport and okay, fine. And then when I was in Ireland, I was there for, I think, 6 weeks for Intel, going to work every day at Intel and all that. So, but because Ireland is by, 7 or 8 hours ahead, at the time it would have been 7 hours ahead of Vegas, I would get the night before, or I would get this person emailing me sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning in Vegas, and so that would be 9 a.m. in Ireland. So I would get to work in the office there, and what's going? Oh yeah, I'm doing this. I'm over here. I'm playing cards at the Four Queens. Where okay, sure, nice. How's Ireland, etc. Cordial conversation. And then I started getting messages from the people that were working for him and that he was problematic and behaving strangely and so on. But still, everybody considers he has become a friend, a network connection of many people. So he has inserted himself into what is already a sort of a weakly constructed circle of trust. Warm introductions. We can use those, can't we? So by the time I got back from Ireland, so 6 weeks later, so 6 weeks before he dropped me off at the airport. Okay, everything's fine. Great. See ya. Thanks. 6 weeks later, I come back from Ireland. The people that were working for him were upset and basically were quitting and they had enough and he hadn't paid them and very strange behaviors. And then it was just getting weirder and weirder. He was showing up pretending that he had a car accident with bandages, but there was no car accident. The bandages were fake and so on. Then he stole some things and disappeared, and that was very strange. So we didn't really think much of it other than, that was weird. Kind of dodged a bullet by just getting away from this person. Sometime later, and I think it was I don't think it was a year later. So this was in 2014. Things for this person went south. I'm going to say his name, but bear with me. So I'm going to say his name because he's in jail now. He's in prison now. So things went south. He kind of disappeared, left town. We started doing the due diligence we should have done earlier. Things like, hey, yeah, why did he only have like a dozen LinkedIn connections? He was older than me, and I at the time had a couple thousand. You meet people in your travels. If he had been in the industry for so long, Facebook page had very little in the way of any information. One picture of one of his, I think his son or something. Said he came in from Florida, but then there was no real evidence that there was any sort of Florida-related anything going on with him. So after the fact, things started looking a little strange. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to happen for everyone. I'm not saying production by a street. I'm not saying that this is something that you have to check for every single person. But when things start looking a little strange or some behaviors don't make sense, or maybe there's just a little bit too much early adoption of the name dropping was probably some evidence. Like, he's really quick to make use of his connections that he's made in his little network here in downtown Vegas. That's not always the case. Some people are merely friendly, merely pro connection, will introduce themselves and so on. They may or may not introduce themselves as, I'm friends of so-and-so. And that was the case with this person. So you're like, I don't know about that. This can be the case on LinkedIn. So, because we have 487 connections in common, you must be okay. But if 403 of those connections are people you've never met anyway, then those don't really count. So there's that trust but verify component that we sometimes let slide because, So anyway, this person disappears. We eventually find, I can't remember if we found out when he had been arrested or during the trial. Like, hey, did you see it? I may have found it, but I can't remember. But we definitely passed around the link. So his name is Russell, standard spelling of Russell, Wayne, Wayne. Divini, or Divini, so it's Deviney, I believe. So Russell Wayne Divini. I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can find the details of his crimes for which he was convicted and sentenced to a long time in jail. There was a minor involved, and there was violence. He did use the internets and some trickery, some fraudulent representations of himself and his age. So it didn't go well. Not a good scene. And, your first reaction is, oh, that's horrible. Your second reaction is, it could have happened here. But the third reaction really could have been, why was it so easy for this person to embed himself so much? So I'm not going to say that warm introductions are always, thank goodness, that they're not always going to result in this sort of thing. But there's always, and again, the people that were working with and for him started noticing I think I met him, I had to have met him in February. So I only knew him for 30 days-ish. He drove me to the airport. So I didn't really know this guy. The people that were working for him didn't know him that well. And then if he stopped paying them and started acting strangely, that's a great time to say, okay, wait, who is this guy? So yeah, he's still in, as far as I know. Every once in a while I look and there's not really a lot of coverage on whether he's still alive. His crimes are not popular with prisoners in prison. So I don't know if he's still alive, but I assume he is. I know he's not been released, as far as I know. Yeah, it's tricky to find information. It's unfortunate that this happened, but it's hard to find out what, where the story is for this person. Obviously, not even gonna mention anything about the other parties involved, other than the fact that it, never should have happened. These things do, unfortunately. But that's a sort of a awful, and I'm trying to keep, I don't want to go into too much detail. I don't want to, this is not what this episode is about. But the take home really summed up pretty eloquently and simply. Trust but verify. Warm introductions are not a bad thing, but trust but verify. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. Don't forget that you can check out the longer version of that story if you really want to. Cafe Genius Impresarios, way back when. In the meantime, thanks for listening as always. And one of these days, if you pick a topic of the 135 topics, because episode 0 was not, it was an introductory show. But now that the show is done, episode 135, there are 135 episodes. Some of the topics are probably similar. So I'm going to say there's not 135 completely independent and unique topics, but there are a lot of topics. If something sounds interesting to you, or if there's something that you yourself find interesting, and I like to have opinions on things. They're not always correct, but it's interesting to think about things. What would we do if we could change or fix or improve or whatever the case is? So that's the motivation for this show anyway. Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. My show clock says we're 35 minutes in. I was padding it, I suppose, with that story, but it is an important story. I will say that I mentioned LinkedIn. Now, this was an in-person introduction, right? And then the continuing chain of introductions and name dropping. Something similar happened on LinkedIn, where a person in the Vegas area was probably problematic, an individual. I will simply say that he once said to me, I reached out to Joe and Kamala. Was it Joe and Kamala? Yeah, at the time. And I said, do you know them? He's like, well, yeah, I emailed them. He didn't say he got an email back. Like, so in that case, from what I had learned, I was like, started looking around, started checking out some things, actually reached out to his LinkedIn connections and said, do you know this person? And they're like, no, not really. I accepted an invite. I don't know who he is. Keep that in mind. Thanks for listening as always, and take care of yourself and be careful who you introduce your friends to, and vice versa. Take care, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.